What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Dark Souls PvP. Alright, guys, we're doing it once again in the Burg. Alright, and actually, I might just title this Just Another Day in the Burg Volume 2. Right? And why do I say that? Well, I don't have a particular build. I'm just, and actually, I should kind of explain that now. What you're going to see is a number of builds that I've been experimenting with. And this is just a lot of the matches that, I used in that experimentation. Because one thing about having the bottomless box glitch, you can basically create builds all the time. And the Burg is one of those locations where I test out the build to see, what, it's going to be a decent build, or maybe I'm not going to like this build, maybe I should delete it. But this is not only my PvP stomping grounds, but also my build experimentation stomping grounds. Alright, now I'm kind of thinking if there's a new area that I need to look for PvP. And actually, out of all the areas that I can think of, you're basically limited to the Burg or the Kiln. Now, I know some of you guys may say, hold on, dude, there's tons of PvP in other locations, right? You have a lot of people who like the PvP in Blacktown and Orlando, and a lot of these other areas. But at the end of the day, although you might find some degree of PvP in these areas, I don't think any of them can compare to the rate of frequency of invasions that you will get in the Burg, right? Which is only second best to the Kiln in my personal opinion. Now, why do I not PvP in the Kiln? Mainly because, who really wants to invade gankers? Right, I don't. Number two, who really wants to go through the whole game to the extent that I create a new build just to get to the Kiln? I don't. One thing about me, I create a lot of builds and I kind of experiment with them pretty often. Right? And this is why the Burg is not only my PvP stomping grounds, but also my PvP build experimentation stomping grounds. Meaning whenever I create something, I just kind of go to the Burg, experiment with it, see if it's going to be viable or not. And if it's not, I delete it. If it will be viable, I just keep it. Right, so it serves a lot of purposes. Right, it serves the purpose of giving me a lot of PvP practice, in addition to allowing me to experiment with anything that I want to create. Now, someone may make the argument of, dude, you can do the same thing in the Kiln. Yeah, that's true. But who really wants to go through the whole game? I don't. Because think about it. With regard to the Burg, you can just go ahead and hit the bottomless box. And then once you do that, if you just choose to upgrade your Estus flask, you can. But, unless you're a faith build, or a sorcery build, you could just basically use the weapons, put the armor together, and just come here and test it out. Right? But who really wants to spend 4 or 5 hours, and actually maybe a little longer for me. I'm actually not all that hot when it comes to PvP. But, I know some of you guys are like, hey, I can just kind of breeze through the game in an hour and a half by just fighting the bosses. Okay, dude, well, I'm not that good yet. Right? So who really wants to spend 5 or 6 hours going through the game just to get to the Kiln? I don't. And as a matter of fact, out of all of my characters, I think I only have 1 or maybe 2 that can invade in the Kiln. And actually, I'm going to delete that one. Right? Because I'm kind of on this kick about fast rolling, and I think I'm going to stay on that kick. Because based upon all my experimentation, right, despite the fact that sometimes I may have to use a Havel's ring, I really prefer the fast roll over the Darkwood Grain ring. Now, I know a lot of you guys may say, hey dude, you're always going from one thing to the next. Right? And someone, and I know somebody will do it because they kind of always do it. Someone will cite the example of, well, you started off on the medium rolls, which was high speed. Then you kind of went on this Darkwood Grain Ring kick, and now you're talking this nonsense about fast rolling. I mean, get a grip, dude. Well, I do have a grip, right? But I mean, you guys need to understand that number one, I PvP a whole bunch, right? I experiment with builds probably as much as I PvP. So as much as I PvP and experiment with builds, I come to a lot of realizations. Case in point, I went through this kick where I was using the Darkwood Grain, and I'm not saying that I will never ever use it in the future. So I know, some of you guys may, kind of keep this in your mind and say, well, dude, in that one, just another day in the Burg vid, you said, okay, listen, dude, and let me kind of make sure I address all the angles. Now, I'm not saying that I will never ever use it in the future. What I am saying is, I'm more attracted to the fast roll than what I am with the Darkwood Grain Ring. I think the fast roll is a little more realistic, and even though it may sometimes require for you to use a Havel's ring, I mean, who really cares? Although it may require for you to use, a lot of points invested in endurance, who really cares? I don't, because I just simply enjoy the fast roll. Right? From what I hear, the so-called, the Darkwood Grain Ring has these so-called invincibility frames, right, where you could just kind of flip through attacks. And I've noticed that, right, because there's been some times where I've been PvPing and you can see the contact of your weapon to the person, but you'll see no damage inflicted. Now, what do I mean by you can see? Well, a lot of times when you notice, when your opponent is hit or when you were hit, you will notice a white flash, right? That flash represents some type of zoning, right? That the software has one person making contact with another. But there are a lot of cases where, you kind of see the white flash, but you will notice there's no damage. And a lot of times you see that with this ridiculous ninja flip. Right? And I mean, it's happened to me because there's been cases where I'll even notice myself, someone is kind of swinging at me, and to me it would look like they hit, but do I take damage? No. Right? So to the extent that this whole theory of invincibility frames is true, right, I don't need it. I'm good with the fast roll. Now, okay, what do we have going on? Alright, so we have a mage class. Okay, no big deal. Now, what you're going to see in this two-part series, I think it's going to be two-part. I kind of have 3 parts, but I really don't know if I have enough to talk about in 3 parts. Right? You're basically going to see 3 different builds. 3 or 4, I can't really remember. I think it's 3. And they are the builds that I was experimenting with. Now, the first build that you saw, with the witch's hat and the wanderer's outfit, that build was basically designed for daggers and the fury sword and the chaos blade. Right, I was kind of deciding if I wanted to do a chaos fury sword build. I still might do one. I just really need to find the right combinations to use, or the right weapon combinations to use with it. I don't know if I would use a fury sword with a halberd, and I think that's a good idea, or something else. Right, but I end up just kind of moving on from that build to this one, where I, just kind of experimented with the scythe, which, is a cool weapon. I've heard a lot of guys talk about it. I've heard a lot of guys say, hey dude, that weapon is super awesome. You can inflict tons of damage with it. And although I do think it's a hotshot weapon, I think most weapons, well, I can't really say most, I think a lot of weapons are hotshot weapons in their own right. Right? Now, you have some weapons that I think are absolutely awful. Case in point, the Lucerne, for example. That weapon sucks in my personal opinion. I have yet to see one person to be pretty successful with the Lucerne. And I'm not talking about, you just kind of use it as a secondary weapon and every now and then, you just kind of switch off to the Lucerne. No, I'm talking about using Lucerne as a primary weapon and being successful with it. I haven't really seen that much, and I'm not even really willing to experiment with it myself because I've kind of tried in the past and it just sucked. I really wish that the moveset for the Lucerne was similar to, what's that weapon in Demon Souls? It was kind of like a hammer. Man, what's that weapon? And I used to use it all the time with my blessed build. I can't really think of it at the time. But I think the moveset for the Lucerne should have been identical to the Murden Hammer. That's what it is. I really think that the moveset for the Lucerne should have been identical to the Murden Hammer, because that Murden Hammer was a beast. In my personal opinion, I used to use that thing all the time in Demon Souls. But I really don't know what kind of idea they came with that Lucerne, because it just absolutely sucks. And even some of these others, a lot of these axes, the animation is so slow, it's just kind of difficult to compete. It's kind of like they may be good in PvE, but in PvP they kind of, leave you vulnerable to attacks, for which even the description will tell you. Right, when you read the description of a lot of those axes, it'll say that although it can inflict a lot of damage, to the extent that you miss an attack, it can leave you open to attacks. So this is why I've never really experimented with a lot of those. But there are a lot of weapons that I've been kind of trying to, kind of test out lately. I've been testing out this weapon, obviously. I've been experimenting with the Burg. And actually with some of the more recent videos that I'll be uploading, you guys will notice that for yourself, right? Because I actually have a few videos with me using the halberd and some of these other weapons that I don't normally use, right? Alright. Now, let's kind of talk about PvP maturity. Actually, not only PvP maturity, but also development and growth. Right? Now, I know some of you may say, okay, dude, like, what are you talking about this time? Right? But this is what I'm talking about. I just recently uploaded a video titled Nowhere is Safe. Right? And I received a lot of love from that video, but at the same time I received a lot of criticisms for that video. So we're just going to kind of talk about it. Now, let's go with the criticisms. Now, first and foremost, I've heard some guys, well actually I haven't heard, I've read some of the comments of guys saying, hey dude, you're dishonorable because you're popping divine blessings. First off, I don't care about honor, right? First and foremost. Anyone kind of familiar with my channel, you would know that. I don't care anything about honor. It's a video game, right? I just play according to my own rules, rules that I establish for myself, right? And that is the standard by which I play, right? I don't think that these are absolutist rules, because most things are conditional. Case in point, as a rule, do I go for a lot of backstabs now? No, not now I don't. You guys can sit back and watch a lot of my videos and you will see that, and a lot of my more recent vids, I really do not go through, a thing where I'm trying to hit off with a lot of backstabs. Now, did I do that in the past? Of course I did, right? Because you evolve to the extent that you do a lot of PvP. You change, right? You develop. Your skills improve, or at least they should. Now, if you're the type of person who's comfortable with a particular tactic, and you just say, well, hell, I'm comfortable with the tactic, it nets me wins, why do I need to experiment with anything else? Then that's cool, That's not the process by which I undertook, right? I went through a process to where I said, you know what? Let me kind of try something else. I don't always have to BS, because actually when I first started with my uploads, a lot of guys used to say that. They used to say, dude, you just kind of BS all the time. Right now, although I was also pretty decent with the setup parries, I mean, that was just how I played. You know, I do a lot of setup parries and I did a lot of backstabs. Now, why is that? I never really experimented with any other tactics, right? So back then, right, of course that's how I played. But back then is not now. And I have developed. Now, if you guys just kind of pay attention to my gameplay, you will notice that I incorporate not only different weapons, but also I parry more. I'm getting better at parrying. I'm getting better at dodging. I'm getting better at kind of assessing my opponent. And because I've improved in a lot of these things, I do not feel the need to go for backstabs as much as I used to. Right? Because, you know, not only did some of you guys say something about the divine blessings, but you said, hey dude, what, you know, you said in the past that, you know, play according to your build and all this other stuff, and there's comments for everything, and there's this. Well, of course I said that. And if you notice in that build, I mean in that particular vid, I was countering, right? And this is why he wasn't able to land all of the backstabs that he attempted. If you watch that video and notice, once I saw what direction he was coming at me, in a lot of those cases, I would counter circle that person, right? And this is why he couldn't land all of the BSs. Now, at the time, was I thinking about kicks? No. But at the same time, as long as I was able to negate some of the damage or land him with the backstab, who really cares, right? And, you know, the reason why, you know, a lot of those comments were funny is because I'm like, hey dude, I mean, do you guys not develop yourself? Right? Do you guys not find yourself in a situation where, you know, whereas in the beginning you may have spam Wrath of Gods, right? But once you have improved your tactics, you no longer feel the need to spam Wrath of Gods? I mean, am I the only person who experienced this? So is it hypocrisy, in other words, to one day have played a certain way and to have one day felt a certain way, but due to your development and improvement in PvP, you have thus changed? I don't see that as hypocrisy, because most people change, not only in PvP but in the real world, right, in everyday living. In other words, I am not today what I was when I was 21. You know, I was not at 21 what I was at 18, right? I wasn't at 25 what I was at 21, because you mature, you change. You know, I remember when I was a kid, you know, I used to wear like kind of baggy clothes, you know. But when I turned 25, you know, I just kind of looked in the mirror and I'm like, I'm too old to dress like this. Right? I need to wear things that fit me, you know, not things that are drooping off. It makes me kind of look ridiculous, and I'm too old for it. And who would take me serious dressed like this as a 25-year-old male? So I changed, right? Now, would the people who knew me before that say, hey dude, you're a hypocrite because now you're on this kick about wearing fitting clothes, whereas before you know, drooped your drawers? Is that a hypocrite? Or is that me changing? Right? So look, granted, I understand that some of you guys may be dissatisfied with my gameplay, you know, and my commentaries. I'm fine with that. But before you be too judgmental about things, make sure you take the time to really analyze and think, and not just shoot off comments because you see something without really giving it a full thought. In other words, think to yourself, okay, is a person supposed to stay the same all the time? You know? I mean, do they have the right to change? Do they have the right to develop? Do they have the right to improve? And if they do have the right to do all of these things, am I being too judgmental in what I'm watching? Right? So it is what it is. Enough rant about that. right? So for all you guys, like I said before, if you notice a change in my views and my PvP style, just understand that I have improved in my offensive and defensive strategies, right? And the things that I needed in the past, I no longer need now. Alright guys, so that's it for now. Martyrs Brigade is